Hello and welcome to today's lesson. I'm your hard-working but indefatigable teacher, Mr. Burton. You will need to watch this video and take notes as you go. You may need to watch certain parts of the video a few times to ensure complete understanding. This is your homework and I will check your notes tomorrow before we get started. I hope you learned something.
Hello and welcome to today's lesson, our second installment in the market research topic. Okay, we kick off today with having a look at where secondary data can be obtained from. So sources of secondary data. We can gain these from market intelligence reports. So analysts out there will devote time, energy and resources to gathering market information. Academic journals, so university researchers will be providing an in-depth insight into areas they study, and those will turn up in academic journals. Government publications, local libraries and local government offices, trade organisations will research and publish the results of their research, preparing reports. Media does investigations and they will report on what they find. There'll be specialist publications, internal company records, and of course we have the internet. So lots and lots of readily available data, secondary data available from quite a variety of different sources. Now, secondary research, the pros and the cons. What's good, what's bad, what are the advantages, what are the limitations? On the positive side, secondary research is often obtainable with little expense. You will need to purchase a market intelligence report. These companies that prepare these reports don't do it for free, and that's their livelihood, that's their business, so companies often will have to pay a bit for those. Now on the other side, now secondary research is not necessarily updated frequently. So if you get a business obtaining primary data, specifically on what they're interested in, they will quite often keep updating, researching. Yeah. But secondary research, it could easily be out of date. Another advantage is it identifies the nature of the market and assists with the planning of primary research. So that secondary data can form the basis of the company itself going away and conducting its own research. On the other hand, the data was originally collected for another purpose. Therefore, it may not be a great fit between what the company wants and what is out there. It's easily obtained, it's quickly obtained. The business doesn't have to devise complicated data gathering methods. But on the other hand, the data collection methods and the accuracy of those methods may be relatively unknown or difficult to discover. Now, secondary research allows the comparison of data from different sources, so the company may go ahead and conduct its own research, primary research, and it can validate that research by having a look at the secondary research. Is it supportive? Now, secondary research is not going to be available, or unlikely to be available, for completely new product developments. There won't be a whole lot of secondary research that is applicable for a company that comes out with a new product which is totally different from any others out in the market at present. The ethics of market research. Market research needs to be consistent and systematic. It has to have the same process over and over, and the same systems, the same routines for comparisons to be valid. It needs to be conducted and results presented without bias. There's no prejudice involved. No one's pushing an agenda. If no one is faking results to make something they want to happen. If market research to be considered ethical, investigators need to be objective, reasonable, accurate and honest when they're planning, collecting, processing and reporting on the market research information, on the data that they've collected. Ethics we define as the moral principles that govern a person's behaviour or the conducting of an activity. Now, we can say that market research would be unethical if it causes damage. So, a confidential interview must be kept confidential. There may be important personal information that is revealed in the interview, and the company has an obligation to keep that confidential. You can't be deceitful, and if you are being deceitful, you're being unethical. So you can't distort the results of research to suit a particular purpose or agenda. So let's say there's a manager that's desperate to push out a new product. He or she may pressure the marketing research team to provide and interpret results in the way that suits his or her agenda. Deception involves being deceitful, distorting the results of research to suit a particular purpose, a particular agenda. Disclosure, if this is unauthorized, we take some research, some people participate for us, they do not consent to us disclosing their information to other parties. This would be highly, highly unethical. Now, market research should be detached, unbiased and objective. The closer market researchers get to the people they're interviewing, the people they're conducting research on, the more biased the results are likely to be. Okay, sampling methods. Sample is a group of people who take part in a market research survey. Now, a sample is typically selected to be representative of the target market overall. And sampling errors in research caused by sample for data collection rather than the whole target population. So the target population is the entire group of individual or objects to which researchers are interested in generalizing the conclusions. So, for example, UK female teenagers aged 12 to 18. Look, the target population is everybody that the firm is interested in researching, and the target population tends to be large. Consider all the teenagers in the US. Perhaps hundreds of millions of these. The sample is then taken, it's a selection of the target population. And here is a good overview of sampling methods.
Simple, convenience, systematic, cluster and stratified. To find things out about a population of interest, it is common practice to take a sample. A sample is a selection of objects or observations taken from the population of interest. For example, a population might be all apples in an orchard at a given time. We wish to know how big the apples are. We can't measure all of them, so we take a sample of some of them and measure them. The method chosen for taking the sample depends on the nature of the population and the resources available in terms of time and money. The ideal is for each object in the population to be equally likely to be chosen as part of the sample. This is called an unbiased sample. It is also desirable for the sample to be representative of the population. If the population of apples were 2/3 red and 1/3 green, the sample should be similarly split. Note that no matter what we do, there will always be sampling error or variation due to sampling, as we are looking at a part of the population, not the whole population. The video on variation covers these concepts more thoroughly. This video presents 5 methods of sampling: simple random sampling, convenience sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling, and stratified sampling. For each method, we will outline the process and the advantages and disadvantages. Simple random sample. Simple random sampling is theoretically the ideal method of sampling. You list each member of the population and use random numbers to decide which objects are in the sample. Each object is equally likely to be selected. This produces an unbiased sample, which we hope is representative. However, it can be difficult and expensive to take a simple random sample when dealing with people. Simple random sampling is more practical when the population is geographically concentrated and when a good sampling frame exists. A sampling frame is a list of all the people or objects in the population of interest. Simple random sampling can be more easily implemented for natural and manufacturing populations. Convenience sample. Convenience sampling is just that, convenient. You ask people nearby or people who walk past at a shopping mall. Or you take the next 20 objects off the production line. You do what is easy or convenient. Convenient samples are often biased in some way, but for a quick and cheap poll it may not really matter. Convenience samples can also have self-selection bias when people choose to participate because they have an interest in the issue in question. Systematic sampling. With systematic sampling, you choose a starting point at random and then systematically take objects at a certain number apart. For example, if there are 1,000 in the population and you want a sample of 50, you would take every 20th object. Systematic samples are easier to administer than simple random samples and are usually a good approximation of a random sample. However, if there is a pattern in the population, certain types of objects could be chosen more or less often than others. Cluster sampling. In cluster sampling, the population is divided into clusters which are then chosen at random. For example, departments of a business can be clusters, or suburbs within a city. Within each cluster, all of the objects are included in the sample. Cluster sampling can be more convenient and practical than simple random sampling. However, if the clusters are different from each other with regard to the elements we are measuring, it can lead to bias or non-representativeness. Stratified sampling. Stratified sampling seems like cluster sampling, but the strata or groups are chosen specifically to represent different characteristics within the population, such as ethnicity, location, age, or occupation. Within each group, a random sample is taken, sometimes in proportion to the size of the group. Stratified sampling can lead to a very good random representative sample. However, it can be complex to administer, and a sampling frame with considerable information about the population is required. There are other sampling methods. The 5 explained here give an idea of the advantages and disadvantages of various methods. You should attempt to use the sampling method that produces the best result for the resources you have available. If your sample has known bias, this should be taken into account in analysis and reporting.
A great overview of sampling methods there, so take a note of the definitions, the explanation, and the advantages and disadvantages of each. Okay, the different sampling methods: quota sampling, random sampling, cluster sampling, snowball sampling, stratified sampling, convenience sampling. Quota sampling, gathering data from a group chosen out of a specific subgroup. So, individuals aged between 20 and 30 years, a researcher might ask 100 individuals. So if that's a target market, consumers aged between 20 and 30 years, then it's just those consumers that the business is interested in sampling from. Quota sampling. Random sampling, the best sampling method. Now every member in the population, the target population, and the target population being the entire group of consumers that the business is interested in targeting has an equal chance of being selected. Stratified sampling, a specific sample from a specific subgroup or segment of the population, and within that random sampling is used to select an appropriate number from each of the subgroups. Cluster sampling. This is using one or a number of specific groups to draw samples from and not selecting from the whole population. So we may just focus on a specific suburb, a specific town, a specific geographical region. Snowball sampling. All the market research is doing here is finding some participants and then getting those participants to invite their friends, their acquaintances, their family, their co-workers to come on and participate in the market research themselves. And convenience sampling, the easiest sampling method, hopefully drawing a representative selection of people because of the ease of their volunteering, or selecting people based on the availability or ease of access. So surveying people in the mall, taking a block of 20 products that are coming off the production line.